This video is about simplifying linear equations. So remember that linear equations are equivalent equations if they have the same solutions. So to change or solve an equation into an equivalent equation, think of an equation as having two sides that need to balance. So there's an equal sign and there's a left or a right sign. So think about a scale, and whatever we do to one side of the scale, we have to do the other so that it stays balanced. So when you are solving, you need to isolate a variable by performing inverse operations. Inverse operations can be thought of as opposite operations. So for example, the opposite of addition is subtraction. We use inverse operations to solve a problem and to get the variable by itself. So let's use inverse operations to solve for a variable today. So first we're going to start easy just by one-step equations and getting to know what our inverse operations are. So in the first one we have x minus 3 equals 5. So to get x by itself, it's subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So we would add 3 to both sides and we would get x equals 8. We're doing inverses so that this number by the x can cancel out. The next one, x plus 7 equals negative 2. So the inverse of addition is subtraction, so we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. And we get x equals negative 9. The next one, negative 6x equals 48. Negative 6x is multiplication. The inverse of multiplication, or the opposite, is division. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 6. So when we divide them, we get x equals negative 8. The next one, x over 7 equals negative 3. X over a number is division, so we're going to multiply both sides by 7. And we get x equals negative 21. The last one is a tricky one because there's a fraction. When there's a fraction, you are going to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal means we are going to flip our fraction. So when we get this, we get x equals 48 over 3, which reduces to 16. So let's try some problems where we're solving for a variable. Number one, x minus 9 equals 13. So to get x by itself, because 9 is being subtracted, we're going to add 9 to both sides. We get x equals 24. If it helps, you can always draw a line down your equal sign and make sure that you do the same operation on both sides of that line. So number two, w minus negative 10 equals 12. Remember when we have two negatives in a row, it becomes positive. So w plus 10 equals 12. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 10 from both sides, and w equals 2. Number three, 5 equals negative 11 plus g. Now, some of us are going to think we want to subtract 11. This is where we have to be careful. We need to look at the sign in front of the 11 because the 11 comes first in this equation. So because the 11 is first and it's negative, the inverse would be to add 11 to both sides. So we would get 16 equals g. Now let's try some equations with multiplication and division. So number 4, we have 11f equals 44. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by 11. F equals 4. Number 5, negative v equals 14. Remember when you have a negative v, that's really a negative 1v equals 14. So to get v by itself, we would divide both sides by negative 1. Which means all we're going to do is flip our sign, and we get v equals negative 14. 6, y over negative 8 equals negative 5. This is a division, so the opposite of division is to multiply by negative 8. So we get y equals 40. Now remember, when you are dividing with fractions, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So when I have 2/3 k, in order to get k by itself, I want to multiply by the reciprocal 3/2. So we can put that into our calculator. 12 times parentheses 3 divided by 2. And we get k equals 18. Number 7. There's a fraction, so I need to multiply by the reciprocal, -4/7. So j equals, in my calculator, 30 times parentheses -4 divided by 7. In this case, I get a decimal. Do not write your decimal answer. Instead, hit math, enter, enter. So our fraction is -120/7. So let's start getting into harder problems. When solving multi-step equations, first thing you have to do and look and see, are there multiple terms that need to be combined, or is there parentheses that I need to distribute? Then think about order of operations backwards. So the next step then is going to be to add or subtract the number away from the variable, and our last step will be to multiply or divide. So solve a linear equation first, simplify, and then isolate your variable. So in number 9, we have -17 equals 2x minus 5. So there's no distributing or combining like terms needed, so I'm just going to start with trying to get x by itself. So first I look and see, is there a number being added or subtracted? There's a 5 being added, so the inverse is to subtract 5 from both sides. So we get 12 equals 2x, and then we're going to divide both sides by 2, so x equals 6. Number 10, 14 equals y/3 plus 12. So my first step is going to be subtract 12 from both sides. 2 equals y/3. Y/3, remember, is division. The opposite of division is to multiply. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Y equals 6. Number 11, -3/4 k plus 2 equals -3. So my first step is to see what is being added or subtracted. We're adding 2. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. -3/4 k equals -5. Then there's a fractions. Remember, to get rid of fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by -4/3. Grab your calculator. -5 times parentheses -4 divided by 3. Math, enter, enter. We get -20, or we get +20/3. Remember, we can also write this over 1 and multiply our numerator and denominator together to get the same thing, 20/3. Number 12 is decimals, but we're still following the same step. So 5.25x minus 8.9 equals 14.2. So my first step in this case, because something was being subtracted, is to add 8.9 to both sides. So I get 5.25x equals 23.1. Then to solve for x, I'm going to divide both sides by 5.25 because x was being multiplied. And we get x equals 4.4. Number 13. In number 13, notice that there's a set of parentheses. So in order to solve, I first need to distribute what was outside the parentheses to each term. So I'm going to distribute 3. Remember, when you're distributing, you are multiplying. So 15 equals 3k plus 6. And then we're going to subtract 6 from both sides because it was being added. So we get 9 equals 3k. Then to get k by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 3, and k equals 3. In number 14, again, there's parentheses, so I'm going to distribute 1/2. So what's half of 6x? 3x. What's half of 22? 11 equals 8. So to solve for x, there's a number being added, so we're going to subtract the 11 from both sides. 3x equals -3. Then to get x by itself, we're going to divide by 3 on both sides. So x equals -1. Number 15, notice that there's two terms with the same variable, so we're going to combine them. Be careful combining like terms. When they are on the same side parenthesis, you keep those signs when you're combining them. So we have 9 equals 6 minus 2 is 4w minus 7. So to solve for w, my first step then is to add 7 from both sides because it was being subtracted. 16 equals 4w. The next step to get w by itself is to divide by 4 on both sides. So w equals 4. Number 16, notice that there's two x terms, so those are going to combine together. So we get 9 minus -2 minus 4 is -6 equals -15. Now, I need to look at if there's a number. 9 does not have a variable, so 9 needs to move. This is where we have to be careful. 9 is actually a positive number because there's no sign out front. So we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. -6x equals -24. And then to get x by itself, we're going to divide by -6 on both sides. And x equals 4. Let's look at two more examples. Number 17. In order to solve for x, we need to distribute the 3 into the parentheses. Remember, 3 does not multiply with 6x because it's not in parentheses. So 18 equals 9x minus 9 plus 6x. There's two x terms, so those are going to combine together. 18 equals 15x minus 9. My next step then is because 9 is being subtracted, I want to add 9 to both sides. 27 equals 15x. And then we're going to divide by 15 on both sides. We know that 15 doesn't divide into 27, but we want to see if it's going to reduce it all. So 27 divided by 15 in my calculator. Math, enter, enter. So it reduces to 9/5. Number 18, 5x minus parenthesis x, 3x plus 7 equals -71. So the first step is we need to distribute the negative sign into the parenthesis because that's what's touching our parenthesis. We do not want to distribute the 5x. So we get 5x minus 3x minus 7 equals -71. We can combine our x terms together. So we get 2x minus 7 equals -71. Then to solve for x, the number that's being subtracted, 7, needs to be added to both sides. So 2x equals -64. And then we're going to divide by 2 on both sides. So x equals -32.